In 2021, what are some examples of evidence that's helpful for you? You talked earlier about emails and text messages, but what are we seeing in the modern day that's positive evidence for the employee?
That's a great question, and I think it really hasn't changed. Maybe the format of it has changed. When I first started practicing law back in the late 40s, it was all documents. It was notes, of meetings, or it was letters or memos or that sort of thing. Now all that's electronic, but it still comes down to the documents. Every employment case, every family law case, the most powerful evidence that you have is going to be a document, right? I mean, it's going to be a text to the paramour, or it's going to be something that the person has emailed about their kids, or whatever it is. And so the first thing we want to do, just like in any case, is we want to get the emails and the text. The amount of information now is just staggering. Social media, and the proliferation of those kinds of platforms are great sources for evidence for us, just like it is for you. So the emails and the texts, other documents are going to be key. Now, the themes that you want to develop, that I want to develop, are going to be that even though proving that the stated reason, the non-discriminatory reason was wrong, that can be helpful to prove that it was a pretext for discrimination. And so I'm looking, is the decision consistent with the documentary evidence? And so I'm looking for, does credibility impeachment? I'm looking for, okay, does the punishment fit the crime? And does the evidence for what they say is the reason for termination, does that line up with what the facts say? Another kind of general category are recordings. In 2021, the number of people who come to my office with a recording has quadrupled. Back say 15, 20 years ago, if it was a sexual harassment claim, there was almost always a recording, some sort of recording. Now, very, very, very frequently, is there a recording that was done on somebody's phone, on Zoom, whatever it is. So those recordings happen. And again, a lot of times it's funny. People come to me, and I would say it's almost inevitable that the recording nearly isn't as much of a blockbuster as the potential client thinks it is. And you listen to it, and at best it can be taken one or two ways. At worst, it just simply doesn't say. I've had people say, "Oh, this recording, I got them on tape admitting that they are firing me because I'm, fill in the blank, black, over 40, whatever it is." And you listen to it, and it just doesn't. Now, the reason they think that generally is because there's some sentence or conversation that when they fill in a bunch of blanks, that's the conclusion that they draw, but it's not, smoking gun evidence of discrimination. So, and just like anything else, corroborating evidence is very, very important. Other witnesses and so forth. I think it's important to have as much corroborating evidence as you can with regard to some element. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It did. Last question, I was leading into this. We issue subpoenas to spouses' employers quite a bit. And we use terms like employment file and other. Can you give us some general advice on what we may not understand about employers when they receive subpoenas from us?
Well, one thing I would keep in mind is that there are many, many files that the bigger the corporation, the chances of what I call file proliferation can occur. And so if you just ask for employment files, you may leave yourself open to missing something. So I would specify the personnel file, which is every company includes different things in the personnel file, but just about every company has a file on every employee they call a personnel file. That may be separate and distinct from the benefits file, which are the employer provided benefits, health insurance, Aflac supplemental insurance, that sort of thing. And then there may be a separate payroll file, which would include all of their compensation, W-2s, that sort of thing. That's HR. HR has its own filing, and there's going to be disciplinary stuff, and there's going to be a lot of stuff in there. Frequently, at a departmental level, supervisors or bosses might have a personal file on their employees. And it may be very, very informal. It's just they've got a file in their desk or in their filing cabinet that's got, John Smith's name on it. And every now and then they just throw something in it, or they make notes. They may make notes of their substantive conversations with that person and throw them in there. And if you don't ask for that specifically, you very rarely get it. And even if you ask for it specifically, to be fair to the employer, a lot of times people don't cop to having that. Particularly the larger the employer, the enterprise, they probably don't want them to have those separate files. But sometimes those files can be chock full of good stuff. Particularly if the supervisor is a friend of the employee and they do things. Maybe they travel together, and there may be hotel receipts, there may be entertainment receipts, or other kinds of documentation of activity that might be of interest to you in your employment. And it's also something that you probably would want to know if you represented that employee. Talking to people's work friends, I think, can be always be very, very helpful, and maybe often overlooked in those kinds of things. But I think, a 30B6 deposition or other kind of deposition of the employer to identify all those different kinds of files and what's in them can be very, very helpful.